Still got a couple people filtering in, but I think we're getting pretty close to a quorum. So we might as well go ahead and get started with introductions. I'm sure some people will filter in additionally. My name is Todd Pearson. I'm one of the team members on the VIGOR study here at UMass Chan, and it's my pleasure to introduce my colleagues, John Harris and Manuel Garber, the co-investigators leading our vitiligo study that we call VIGOR. And what they're going to do this evening is give you just a couple of brief overview points and updates about the study. And then what we really want to do is make it into a session where you can ask them questions and find out things about vitiligo, about the study, logistical things, sort of whatever, pretty open-ended, and get a chance to hear directly from John and Manuel. We will wrap this up by the top of the hour at the very latest. We won't go over an hour here on a Tuesday evening. But with no further ado, I'll turn it over to John and Manuel and let them introduce themselves, and we'll get started.
Great. I'm John Harris. I'm a dermatologist and a scientist, and I'm super interested in vitiligo. Spend all my time thinking about vitiligo, and we spent years identifying the opportunity to create new treatments for vitiligo. This is a little bit different, what we're going to be talking about tonight. It's kind of the next big phase, I think, that we came up with together. But I'll let Manuel introduce himself.
I'm Manuel. I'm not a dermatologist. I'm more of a mathematician in computational biology, so I am the one who deals with the data that this project will gather. And yes, we work together to try to figure out how this disease begins, and thanks to you guys, we'll hopefully be successful.
There you go. So I can start and talk a little bit about why VIGOR. And for a long time, we've spent, as I said, we've spent time trying to understand what causes vitiligo, all the details, what's happening in the skin, how does the immune system work together to drive this process of new white spots on the skin. And the goal has really always been to develop new treatments, and that's happening. It's super exciting. But what's always nagged me in the back of my mind is how does it start in the first place? How does it? Patients ask me this all the time. Well, why did I get it? Why me? I don't have anybody in my family with vitiligo. Why did I get it? Or I do have people in my family, and my cousin and I got it, but why not anybody else? Why not my brother? Why not my sister? We don't have any of the answers for that. We know that genetics plays an important role because vitiligo tends to group in families, but it's not obvious. I can't tell somebody if you've got a father with vitiligo, are you going to get it or not? Chances are about 6% if your parent has vitiligo. So we wanted to understand that a lot in more detail. And some of that is just incredible curiosity. It's really saying, how does this thing that we think about all the time begin? And we have a mouse model of vitiligo. We have mice with vitiligo in the lab. You're probably aware of that, have heard of that. But the mice can't tell us how vitiligo begins because we give it to them and then study how it unfolds. So how does it begin can't be answered with most of the tools that we've used previously. I think the only way it can be answered is with you, with people and their family members. And we're going to talk more in depth about that tonight. But the other thing is once we understand how vitiligo begins, it gives us this opportunity to prevent it in the first place or to reset the body as a cure. So to get rid of it completely. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to conduct this study so that we can understand from the very beginning, where does vitiligo come from? When we understand that, we can prevent it and we can potentially cure it. If you want to.
So what I wanted to do is walk you a little bit about why and how are we doing the study, and then tell you a little bit where we at and who do we have and how does it look, and hopefully we'll do that at some point, maybe once a year we can do this just to share with you where we are in the study. So the way we have done this is to contact people who have vitiligo mostly, or have a close relative that has vitiligo that has said that they're interested in participating in studies like the ones we are conducting. And then if you click Todd. and then we direct you to our website, which is still available. And by the way, we're still recruiting, so you are welcome to come and share the data and sign up in our database. But those of you who have signed up, then yes, we refer to you guys at phase 1. Those are the people who sign up to our website. And yeah, click yes. And what we do is we send you that individualized link that you can share with your family members. As you share it with them, then we can link you guys with your family members to make and that you can click on that. Yeah, to do this, which is a typical family of you in the study. This is real data. And what happens is the person that is Black, that he is 16 years old, have vitiligo, and he has recruited all his siblings and his parents to the study. And what our study is working with you as a family more so than each individual. And again, you don't need to have vitiligo to be in the study. Actually, we are interested in both people who have vitiligo or do not have vitiligo. So, and as John said, one of the motivations of the study is to confirm or dismiss all these things that we have heard that might cause vitiligo or eventually might not, like stress or life changes or giving birth or many things that we hear in the clinic that might or might not cause vitiligo. So that's part of our motivation to this study. That's why we need people who has or who have not vitiligo.
Yeah, that question came up today. I just came from clinic. I have clinic on Tuesday afternoons, and the question comes up every time. Well, what did I do to cause this, or am I responsible, or what event in my life really initiated this? And we don't have too many answers. So we have lots of people with lots of ideas. Stress is a big one. When you undergo stressful life events, we know that vitiligo tends to happen more or spread. And we know a few things that can trigger vitiligo, but this is really our way to figure it out. So if you enroll in our study, we're going to follow you and be very closely communicating with you for 5 years in the study. We're going to want to know anything that you want to have to tell us. So, did you move? Did you start a new job? Are there stressful life events that occurred? Did you just get the flu? What happened? And then what happened with your vitiligo? Did you get new vitiligo if you didn't have it before? If you already had vitiligo, did your vitiligo get worse? This is your opportunity, and we're developing a great app to help us do that. So it'll be hopefully pretty fun, and you'll be able to tell us in real time what's happening. And we'll be able to put these pieces together because Manuel's an amazing mathematician. So he'll be able to take, something that happened to you and then something that happened after and put them together. And if it happens to more than one person, we can start to build that and understand triggers.
So yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is one example of a family tree, right? So in this case, when we colored it black, and we will probably share these trees with you as we go forward, is that one person has vitiligo, the circles are females in the family, the squares are males in the family. And you can see that this one particular family has just one individual with vitiligo. Again, we're really interested in both families where one individual has vitiligo and the rest of the family doesn't have, as well as families where more than one individual has vitiligo. So everybody is welcome to this study.
I know early on, usually previous to this, when we were recruiting people for our studies, we wanted people with vitiligo. That's how we learned about vitiligo. And when we started this study, a lot of people assumed it was very similar. Well, I don't have vitiligo, so I can't participate. In fact, this study is for people without vitiligo, mostly. We really want people without vitiligo, but have a relative with vitiligo. So that we had to get that communication out. There was some misunderstanding, and we want to make sure that that's clear. The more people without vitiligo we have in the study, the more we'll learn.
So in the next slide, we will, so where are we at? So we have about 250 families that sign up that have at least one member with vitiligo and one without. And we even have 26 families that have more than 5 members enrolled. And we come from, you guys come from almost all of North America. We colored in blue the provinces of Canada, where some of you come from. Not surprisingly, since John has his clinic in Boston, Massachusetts is the place where most of you that sign up live. But California, Florida, and New York are really close by. And we hope to to share and continue to grow all the states that have the representation.
The great thing about this study is you don't usually when I recruit people from my clinic, sometimes I have people who travel very far, South America. We've had people from Russia and India who travel, and we really can't recruit them in our studies because we need them nearby to be able to sample them. Even if they're from other states, it's pretty hard for us to recruit them in the study. But for this study, we can recruit from anywhere in the US. So that's what's really great. So California, that's the second largest state recruiting for the study, and that's fine. We're going to mail things to California. You're going to send them back. You don't have to be here. You don't ever have to come into our clinic. And from what I understand, no question, this is the first study of its kind for vitiligo. We think it's the first study of its kind for any skin disease, and we're pretty sure it's the first study of its kind for any disease, period. The skin allows us to be able to mail you a kit and have you send some data back where we can actually get samples. And so we're really piloting this for every disease in humans, which is pretty exciting.
And there is a funny note, and this is that pie chart. So vitiligo has really equally distributed between males and females. There is no more predisposition in males or females. Yet most of our participants, almost 3-to-1, are female.
Yeah, the ladies are signing up.
Yeah,
and signing up their family members.
Yeah, so we look forward to our male colleagues to also sign up and enjoy and enroll in our study.
This is really interesting. Actually, we hadn't predicted this, but if anybody has any ideas out there why this might be, why it's 2-to-1 more females signing up for the study than males, we'd love to know. If there's a way to kind of recruit more males in families, we know that the families are half male, so this is more of a recruitment thing. So if we can find a way to rebalance, we'd love to.
Yeah, exactly. Good. So that is where we are at. That's where we have what you guys have been signing up so far.
I think our plan was to tell you a little bit about the study. We didn't tell you all the details, but we can. So we're here. We've got plenty to say, but we don't want to take all our time talking about what you probably may already know. You've probably read about it. And so if there are questions, we'd love to start taking those. We can talk about whatever you like.
And we have indeed had some questions come in, so I'll just start reading them off, and then you can each take a turn at answering. If one of you feels more appropriate at answering than the other, that's fine. I leave that to you. Just to get started, a real basic question, and that is, how did you become interested in studying vitiligo in the first place?
I should probably start.
You should start.
Because I dragged Manuel into this a few years ago, and he can tell you maybe that story. That's a good one too. But I actually started in medical school when I got a combined degree. I wanted to become an MD and then also get a PhD in research. And the lab I chose to go to was a type 1 diabetes lab. So I was studying diabetes and how the immune system attacks insulin-making cells to cause diabetes. I got fascinated by that process and I wanted to fix it. I had family members with diabetes and it just seemed like an important question. But I got pretty quickly frustrated that in the lab, I was only studying cells in a dish, or at best we were studying mice and rats, and we were not studying humans. It's just too difficult to get pancreas from a human with diabetes to understand it. And interestingly, when I finished, that was my biggest frustration. And when I went back to medical school, I met a patient in the intensive care unit who had new onset type 1 diabetes. My mentor introduced me to her because he knew this would change my life probably, but she had new onset type 1 diabetes, vitiligo, autoimmune thyroid disease, and pernicious anemia, an autoimmune disease in the gut that affects vitamin B12. And so it was immediately then I became very excited and I said, I can understand this process and I can get my hands on her skin. It's the skin I can study. So I started to wonder about vitiligo and its relationship to diabetes, and made that decision actually that night to become a dermatologist and to study vitiligo. And the rest is history. I've never changed my mind or turned back. Initially, it was diabetes that got me into vitiligo. Now I've met so many people with vitiligo. I've really fallen in love with the community and my patients, and those who aren't my patients with vitiligo, and understanding the process itself. That's what I do. So how did you become interested in vitiligo?
Well, that's your fault. But it's also a process. It's funny that didn't know, but I also started my autoimmune disease interest with type 1 diabetes.
Wow.
And when I joined UMass, I worked with a diabetes center on type 1 diabetes. But it was frustrating, same problem as you had, where the rat models were very artificial. That's what the field uses to try to understand type 1 diabetes, and working with samples from disease people were not, in my view, going to help us understand type 1 diabetes. So we met, we didn't know each other, but we met in an event at the university, and John came to my office one day and said, I know you have this device that can sequence cells, and I want to see if we can work together on skin. I said, I don't know anything about skin. But then he described vitiligo, and it was something that, again, as he just said, you could sample from people. We could make a big impact and analyze the samples right away from people. And we have been doing this together now for 6 years.
Yeah, six
years.
We were playing volleyball, by the way. My lab was playing his lab in volleyball. That's what it was. And I said, "Oh, I've heard about you. You're famous on campus. Let me tell you, pitch this idea." And was able to get him interested. So I'm glad. This is good for the vitiligo. Having him involved is good for the vitiligo community.
So it's been a great ride.
Yeah, it has.
And so lots of questions coming in. And so, John, you did mention something about that patient you saw when you were a student having multiple autoimmune diseases. And so we had a question coming in saying, my sister seems to have a thyroid connection. I too have hypothyroidism, but no vitiligo. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the connection between vitiligo and other autoimmune diseases.
Yeah. So what we're studying in the study really is the genetic predisposition to vitiligo, the genes that drive vitiligo. And one thing that we've learned, there have been some genetic studies. Richard Spritz conducted these out of Denver, in Colorado. And we've learned from his studies over about 10, 15 years that most of the genes that are responsible for causing vitiligo are in the immune system. They affect the immune system. Essentially, we believe that they're making the immune system stronger. And so when you have a very strong immune system, that's good because it protects you from cancer, it protects you from infections and lots of things. But at the same time, if it's too strong, it can start attacking your own tissues and give you autoimmunity. And so those genes, if you have that predisposition and autoimmunity in your family, it doesn't just cause vitiligo, but it causes thyroid disease and diabetes and all these things. These are all diseases caused by an overactive immune system. And so one of the good things is that as we study this and as we investigate vitiligo and the genetic effect and connection to vitiligo, we're going to learn about the genetic connection to all these other diseases as well. So this is a real opportunity for us. So having vitiligo gives you an increased risk of getting thyroid disease. About 17% of people with vitiligo get thyroid disease. 3% of the general population without vitiligo gets it. So there's definitely a connection there. And when I see patients in clinic, often I'll say, well, anybody else in your family with vitiligo? And they may say yes, they may say no. The majority say no. And then I say, well, does anybody have any other autoimmune disease like diabetes or thyroid disease or vitamin B12 deficiency? And that's where I get all the yeses. Oh, my aunt has this and my uncle has that. And that's where we see those traveling together. So it's probably the genetic predisposition. We're going to learn that from this study.
Correct.
And honestly, if you have family members with vitiligo, or if you have family members who don't have vitiligo and have thyroid disease or diabetes or those things, those are going to be really valuable because we'll learn about that too.
Next question. This one might be for you, Manuel. It is, how many people do you need in your study to get the most relevant data? And if I might just add to that, what is the ideal composition of a family group?
So yes, we are thinking about 1,000 or more people in the study. We're getting close to those numbers. The the ideal family is a little bit like the one I presented, where one or two members have vitiligo and then a few others do not. So we can, we will follow you through the course of the study. And as John says, there is increased risk. Also shared environment, which might be also impinging on the already genetic predisposition. So that is the ideal. About 1,000 people broken up in 250 families. That's what John and I thought will make the study most powerful to get at the question that we posed.
Great. Another question. I actually am going to answer this one. How do you like that? One of our participants said, I've recently moved across the country, need to update my address and would like to know how to do this. And while this person said we didn't need to answer it live on the air, I thought it would be valuable because other people may wonder the same question. And at the very end of the presentation tonight, we have an email for our study that I will share on the screen for you. So if you need to contact us about anything, changing address, you found a new family member that you think you can recruit to the study, whatever, use that email address. It's vigor@umassmed.edu. And again, I'll put it on the screen at the end. And that is the best way to get in touch with us about anything related to this study. Another question that came in is pretty straightforward. Have you guys completed any other vitiligo studies before?
Yeah, and we're not done. So when we first started talking 6 years ago, we had this idea to take Manuel's really cutting edge technology and bring it into vitiligo. And that was to get samples of skin from people with vitiligo and analyze them using his technology. And so we started that, and we got, I think, one sample, maybe two samples. And we started to look. I remember very distinctly Manuel coming to my office saying the data looks terrible. Like, the samples look terrible. I don't think this is going to work, but we should try. We should try a couple more. Let me just think about it. And then I remember you coming back not that long after, and you said, we figured it out. It actually does work, and it looks good. So we took that data from a couple people, and we applied to the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, which is your tax dollars that fund research in health and disease. And we applied for a grant, and it was kind of it was an odd grant where it was like, look, this isn't likely to work, but if it did, it would be really, really important. And we got that grant. Actually, we got a score, like you said, you'd never seen before, a 14, which is a pretty high score on a grant. We got that grant, and it provided some funds to get us going for the next few years to collect data and to do more of this. And we collected that data, and we found some important things. We reported that, we published it, and we're still analyzing that data now. And that provided an opportunity for us to get another grant from the NIH that is not this study. And we're using that data to make sense of what's happening in vitiligo. It turns out that your immune cells crawl into the skin, and then everybody talks to each other. This immune cell talks to that immune cell, talks to that skin cell, and there's this loud conversation happening in there that Manuel discovered in our data. And so then we got another grant from the NIH to really drive that, make sense of that. And because we had all this data, then we could go and apply for another grant from the NIH, which is what this one's about, this VIGOR study.
But that original grant is what makes this study possible, because until now, it's very hard to connect genetics to the end outcome, vitiligo. It's almost impossible mathematically or even statistically. It's very hard to go from an event that might have happened 3 years prior to you going to the doctor and be diagnosed with a disease. And in our data, what we realize is that skin that looks perfectly normal in people who are affected have this clear kind of a shadow state, very similar to lesions, but a much milder one.
Shadow's a good word.
Shadow,
we haven't used that before.
And we carried this study not with John, but with his colleagues in other diseases, and this is still the case. In many diseases, you can see in skin that looks very healthy, a shadow of what happens in skin. So what drives this study is we think we can measure that shadow in people who might be developing vitiligo and do it early and closer to the event that caused it. That's the crux of why this study will work, and that's what the initial data that we obtained together has funded.
Yeah.
But besides that, John has 3 or 4 clinical studies where he has tried compounds that he found in the lab to treat vitiligo. And many of the treatments that you guys are using are probably coming from those studies.
Yeah, and companies have asked us, if we can help them develop these drugs, and sometimes it's finding a drug that won't work for vitiligo. So sometimes it's working with a company to let them treat just a few patients and determine that it probably won't work, to save lots and lots of others from enrolling in a trial where it won't help. And so Manuel, we've worked on some of those too, clinical trials and determine those things, and it's fun.
Yeah, most of them do not work, and
most things don't work.
Yeah, and they are stopped early.
Yeah.
So kind of related to treatment, we had a question that says, I'm curious how this study will translate to an actual treatment or cure. What I am hearing is this is to understand the onset of vitiligo primarily, but what about potential treatments or cures from the VIGOR study?
So the vision with the study is to be able to diagnose vitiligo before you even have vitiligo. So by doing so, people who will have this diagnostic tool will be able to be either treated or change or change some of the behavior that might exacerbate the symptoms that are going to cause vitiligo. So that's what we call the study, to help us prevent vitiligo or cure vitiligo before it begins. That's the whole point of the study. Will be transformational in the fact that we will hopefully be able to say, hey, you are at risk. You can monitor. You might develop vitiligo in 2 or 3 years. If you do this, you might prevent this from happening or delay it by many years.
Right.
So that's the goal of this study.
The other hope is that if we are able to catch the transition from before vitiligo to after vitiligo, we need to know what are the parameters that switch to upset that seesaw. And if we know those parameters, we can not just treat to inhibit the inflammation, but can we reset everything so that the skin is normal again? And if we can reset it, the skin's very good at preventing inflammation. Like most of our skin is not inflamed at any one time. So that the skin knows how to do that. And if we can re-educate it by using data from the VIGOR trial, then the skin can do it itself, and we can correct it from the core.
We had a question that came in about one of the graphs that you discussed, Manuel. It says your graph of vitiligo cases by state is pretty much a graph of population by state, which makes me think that the incidence is evenly distributed throughout the country. Do you think that that's the case?
Yeah, so mostly, except Massachusetts, which is the exception to that rule. But the reason for that is John has a clinic. But yeah, the proportion of people who participate, which is good for us, is proportional to the population of the state where they live. And yeah, we hopefully and as you said, the hope is that we have participation that is proportional to where people live, and that's the ideal study.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Now some more maybe practical questions about the study. We have one that says, how long will this study last, and how often will we be receiving kits?
Yeah, well, so the study is lasting as long as the funding that we have to keep it going. So right now, the NIH has committed 5 years of funding to us. So minimum of 5 years. And the longer we're able to follow families like this, the more we're going to learn. And so if we can follow even longer than 5 years, that would be even better. So I'll throw this out there. We're pretty sure that based on the excitement from this trial, not only from you and signing up for it, but also from the funders, the NIH and other people who are seeing it, we think that we're going to be able to continue this study even longer. Your commitment now is signing up for the 5 years for the study. Let us follow you and learn from you for 5 years. Our hope is that things go really, really well. And you're enjoying being in the study, and it's a lot of fun for you and us, and we extend it for even longer. That'll be a new ask. That's something that you can choose or not choose to do after that. We are going to be reaching out to you with questions 4 times a year, right? Every 3 months with a survey asking you to fill out some things. Some of them will be even real time, how did you feel? If you get sick, we want you to let us know. If you have a major life change or event, we want you to let us know right away. We're going to be sending kits out twice a year, every 6 months, to give us samples to be able to follow.
So, and I don't know if you guys saw, but we shoot a video of me using one of those devices, the Tasso, and any question you have about using them, we'll be happy to answer.
Great. Some questions about enrollment. Would it be useful to enroll a maternal grandmother, and also our aunts and uncles, should they be asked?
So what we're thinking is for grandparents, probably what we will do is the genetic part and maybe not monitor them throughout. That's one of the thoughts that we have been considering. And definitely uncles will be very welcome to join to the study. Like we think grandmothers will be, I don't think the sampling, the at-home sampling will be ideal, but it depends on them. If they want to do it, then by all means.
Just the saliva. They need saliva for the genes. So it's really cool actually to be able to follow, Manuel showed that tree, it showed parents and children. There can be grandparents, there can be cousins, there can be uncles. And he's able, so Manuel's a geneticist. He actually worked on the Human Genome Project, and it was a major driver in sequencing human chromosomes and working through that. So following genes through generations is really, really fun for him, and that's awesome. So to be this study is really the first opportunity to do that in detail.
So hopefully those will be results that will be useful for the community. And yes, so that's why for the grandparents, the saliva sample will be ideal, and I don't think we'll require them to do anything else.
So another question related to enrolling family members. You shared that you are looking to link family members. Does that also include minors?
Yeah, so the part of the reason why we want to follow family members of people with vitiligo over time is that those family members might develop vitiligo. So this is our very real opportunity to take a look at their samples before and after they develop vitiligo. And honestly, the younger the family member, the better the opportunity to catch in case vitiligo happens. And certainly nobody's wishing for vitiligo to affect a family member, but if it does, then we really want to be able to learn from it. And honestly, if your grandmother is 85 years old and doesn't have vitiligo, chances are pretty good she is never going to develop vitiligo, right? But the younger you are without vitiligo, the better chance we have to follow over time and see maybe a before and after event. And so young children are super valuable to our study. We're able to enroll down to the age of 6. And so under the age of 18, a child can't consent to a study. So our study actually has built-in plan where the child assents, the child has to agree to do the study, has to be interested and willing to do it. And then the parent consents on their behalf and works with the child. It's a real opportunity for the whole family to get involved, to teach children about research and the role it plays in health and overall. So we're excited about it. Hopefully you are too.
Another enrollment question. My parents are in their 80s. Could I sign them up if they might not complete the 5 years? And I might add that that is not just with people of, say our parents' generation, but kids going off to college. Maybe you don't know if they'll stick with it through the full 5 years. So can you speak to signing people up if you're unsure about their ability to make it through all 5 years?
So every study has incomplete data, and we will account for this. So yes, so I would not rule out, again, grandparents will be mostly, ideally only contribute their saliva sample, so that will not apply. Then if your younger children go out to college, as long as we follow them for a little bit, and that should help with the
We'll,
study.
we'll send their kids to college.
And yes, we'll send them the kids to college.
I mean, ultimately, the longer that we're able to follow everybody in the study, the more we're going to learn. And so our goal is really to bring people in who are committed to this for 5 years. Life events change, things change.
Exactly.
You're not committed. You don't have to stay in the study. There's no, you're always welcome to do whatever you like. That's always an opportunity to drop out of the study. We're just hoping that it's fun and people are engaged and they'll stay with us.
But as John said, we can send the kids to their college.
We'll send it to college, yeah, to the dorm room.
Great. So this one might be for you, John, and that is, what treatments are in the pipeline for treating vitiligo, and what kind of timeline do these treatments have?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. Happy to answer that. So the first treatment for vitiligo was developed about 3,400 years ago in India, and that was puva therapy. It was chewing on a plant with a chemical called sorlin and treating their skin with sunlight, which had UVA, and that combination treated vitiligo. We still use that. We were using that up until about 30 years ago. And then we transitioned a little bit to still using sunlight, but a different fraction of sunlight where we use UVB. So phototherapy is one of the mainstays of vitiligo treatment. We also sometimes use oral steroids to shut off disease if it's spreading super fast. I saw a number of patients, we talked about this in clinic today. And then we also use creams, and we've had creams for 20 or 30 years that shut off the inflammation and autoimmunity that treat vitiligo. What's exciting is now there are many, many more drugs in the pipeline that we just haven't had for decades. And we have the first FDA approved drug, which is a new cream called Opzelura, or topical ruxolitinib. You've probably seen commercials on TV. This was FDA approved a year and a half ago, the first FDA approved treatment to reverse vitiligo, which is super exciting. I use it a lot. It works well. There are 3 phase 3 clinical trials ongoing to take a drug that's similar to the one in the new cream, but it's an oral drug, so it treats the whole body through a pill. Those are ongoing and recruiting now. The fact that they're in phase 3 means the phase 2 already worked. So these are exciting. These are coming. Based on our research, the idea to use those drugs, that they're called JAK inhibitors, came from research that we did many years ago on the pathogenesis of vitiligo, because patients let us use their samples. Research in 2018 gave us the new idea to target resident memory T cells in IL-15 that are required for them. So we developed a drug that inhibits IL-15. It's an antibody. I started a company. That company was acquired by Incyte, the same company that makes the FDA-approved cream. That drug has been in phase 1 clinical trials already, and it's moving along. So I would say, in terms of, and lots of companies reach out to me with their own ideas. They want to know if I think that their drug might work, and a lot of them might. So there's a lot more, even more than that, coming that I'm trying to help them develop. In terms of timeline, I would say, so we already have the new FDA-approved cream. The oral ones that are in phase 3, that's as close as you get. So after phase 3, if they show that it works, the FDA approves it. We're probably 3 years away from any of those pills being approved and seeing commercials online. The injectable one against IL-15 that we developed is in phase 1. We're probably 8 to 10 years away from approval for that one. And then even the newer ones that we're talking about, even longer, 10 to 15 years. But I can say over the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to have the whole landscape is going to be completely changed. The toolbox that we have as physicians, and then therefore you have as patients, to treat your disease is going to be very rich, and you'll have lots of opportunities.
A related question about treatments, and that is, are you going to be looking or comparing different treatment modalities and their effectiveness in the VIGOR study?
Yes. So it's actually that we had not built in, but yes, this is the feedback that we need, and if we will gather that information and include it as correlate to see if the treatment works or doesn't work. It helps with that shadow signature that we were talking, or it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't help. Yeah, by all means.
Definitely. Most of the studies that we've done until now have always been on people who are not treating their vitiligo. So we've been specifically recruiting people whose vitiligo is spreading in their skin and they're not treating it because we want to see what raw vitiligo looks like in terms of our signature.
But not in this study.
In this study, this is going to be our first time when you can use whatever treatment you want to use, treat it, don't treat it, change your treatments, whatever. All we need to know is the details of it. So if you change your treatment, we want to know. If you start treatment, we want to know.
And that would help us. Yeah, that
And
would
then we'll-
establish how useful or not useful under what circumstances, what type of vitiligo, what type of genetics might or might not affect the efficacy of the treatment. And by all means.
Right.
Is there any evidence that vitiligo is increasing in the worldwide population, or is any increase due solely to improved diagnosis?
Yeah, so Dr. Spritz talks about this all the time. He did the genetics of vitiligo, and he said it's pretty clear that since the 70s, the early 70s, vitiligo has been increasing at a pretty significant rate. So have all other autoimmune diseases. So we don't know that this is probably not just vitiligo, but diabetes has been increasing, and we're not sure exactly why. And this study is the study to tell us why.
I've been fascinated. This question is fascinating. So I've been looking at, maybe I'll do a blog in one of those weeks about this, but there is a group that did a study in the UK. In the UK, a huge part of the population enrolls in a study very much like the one we are conducting. And what they found is vitiligo has increased from 2000 to 2017, where they compared by 1.5-fold. So yes, there has been a significant increase in vitiligo occurrence in the UK.
Yeah, and when controlling, it's not just diagnosis. We think that the disease itself is actually increasing.
So we had another person ask a very similar question to that. And so you've answered part of it, but this person, the unique part of it is, why do you think autoimmune diseases like vitiligo are on the rise in the population?
That's what we're going to learn in the studies. There are lots of possibilities. Exposures. We've got more and more products that we come exposed to. We know that hair dyes actually cause vitiligo and make it worse. So that's one chemical exposure that we know does that. There's also a medication actually that you can take through a patch, and when people put the patch on their skin, vitiligo can occur underneath that patch. So these are some exposures that are new that we never had before. They're just in the past 20 or 50 years. There was even an exposure in Japan. There was a new skin cosmetic cream that was developed that lightened the skin, and people started using it. And over 18,000 people got vitiligo in one summer in 2013. It was fascinating. So that's one thing. We think that exposures have changed. We come into contact with more things, more chemicals. That might be one thing. Certainly, it's not the genetics, right? Genetics haven't changed enough in the last 50 years to drive this process.
Yeah. So more complex. And another theory that has occurred is less exposure when we are young to a gamut of potential antigens. So the world we have made a world which is sterile.
Yeah.
Sterile.
I grew up on a farm. I grew up in a sandbox playing with animal parts. And so I was exposed to lots of things that people nowadays aren't. We're much cleaner, and maybe that could be a reason.
Yeah, those are unknowns.
Coming back to the study itself, I got a question that says, I'm trying to convince my family members to participate, but they are a little apprehensive. Can you review some of the sampling techniques you plan to use so I can better educate them?
Yeah. So Manuel, you want to start?
We can start, yes. So one of them, the one that causes more apprehension, is the blood, which is, I found an amazing device. Actually, John knew about it. I never seen this device before. So we ordered a few of those devices. I tried them, and I was impressed. So it's a tiny device that creates a vacuum in your shoulder. You can see me using the device, and makes a little puncture. I confess that I almost do not feel it, but John always says that my pain threshold is high. And but I really don't feel it, and then it just slowly pulls with the inverse pressure. It just sucks a little bit of blood out of you and gets you 1 little microliter of blood. So that's a device to look at antibodies that might be targeting your own cells.
we have a collaborator at MIT who really developed this really cool device. Actually, I'm going to go grab one because I've got it.
Yes, I couldn't find mine today.
All right. This is one that I used on myself just a couple of days ago. I saved it. Yeah, the micro patch. So this is a tiny patch I'm going to show you here. See that? And it feels, so you just kind of take it and press it into your skin, and it feels like Velcro. Like as a kid, I would always take Velcro and kind of stick it on. It's got, you know, the Velcro has those little plastic pieces on the end. And this just stays on the skin, I think 10, 20 minutes. You might tape it on or hold it on depending on how long. And then that comes out, and then you're going to throw it into a little case that we give you and mail it back to us.
So like one of those contact glass cases?
Yeah.
You throw it in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you send it to us.
The other thing is something that looks like Scotch tape. So, you know, what you make to use to wrap your presents at Christmas or other holidays, birthday, you essentially put the tape on your skin and pull it off, and then put the tape on and pull it off, put the tape on and pull it off. It actually collects kind of the dead skin samples from there. We can learn a lot from that as well. And then the last thing is the saliva spit tube, where you just probably done that for COVID testing. You just spit into the tube and send that back to us.
And that will be just once at the beginning. That will be the first kit that we'll send you. Hopefully in March, we'll have that spit tube, and that will be just once too.
But always happy to answer more questions about that. It's really very minor. Even the blood. I mean, it sounds like, oh, blood collection. It's you click a button, and within 5 minutes it collects it, and it's very, very minimal. But we can get so much information from that. It's nothing like getting your blood drawn from a phlebotomist, right? For medical stuff.
Another question about enrollment. I'm here because my sister has vitiligo. What can I do to participate in the study?
Sign up. Yeah. You're exactly who we're looking for in the study. And so sign up yourself. We can send the link to you to connect you to your sister. As long as your sister enrolls, we definitely need somebody with vitiligo related to you enrolled. And honestly, if you can find more people from your family, the more the merrier. Like I said, we have a dream family that has 11 people in it. Yeah, it's super exciting. We can't wait to see what happens there. But more people sign up and just respond. And when we send the app out, tell us about you. That's it.
Person asks, says, I'm wondering if there's any difference in how vitiligo presents and continues based on it if it emerged as a result of stress versus having a family history.
No. So the vitiligo looks pretty much the same, whatever leads to it. And we don't think it's, family history caused vitiligo or family history genetic vitiligo versus stress caused vitiligo. All these things connect and interplay together. So you're born with the genetics, you may or may not get a vitiligo. But if you're born with the genetics and you have a predisposition, then you go through a stressful event and the timing is right, and everything else aligns, then you develop vitiligo. So all these things come together. Of course, that's exactly what the study is meant to learn.
Yeah, because that's a theory that that we have, but it's really not validated. Maybe stress actually does not.
Yeah,
that could be one of the outcomes of this. But that stress is not what you should be looking for if you are at high risk. That's could be good news also.
What else should we talk about? The hair.
Yeah, the hair, right? Yeah, the hair is very, very good.
I learned, I went to a meeting actually this past summer, and I learned about the fact that stress, indicators of stress is built up in your hair. And so when you're really, really stressed, there are some markers of that in your bloodstream and in your skin, and it gets deposited in the hair as the hair grows. So we're pretty excited about this. This is not a requirement in the study. We're still exploring, but we might at some point collect just a few hairs from patients, or not patients, but from enrollees and participants in the study. And for every centimeter of hair, we can learn about 1 month of stress. So if you indicate on your survey that you've been stressed in the past month or so, that some event caused that, we think that we can collect your hair and actually see that and measure that. And so that would really change this whole thing. We'd have a great way to connect stress to vitiligo.
And actually answer that.
Yeah,
it will.
That's the fun part of the study too. We're learning, we're trying new things, and you're going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, lots of additional great questions about enrollment. So a couple of related ones. First, will the study be available to non-English speakers, specifically Italian, and can participants enroll from outside of the United States?
Yeah, so non-English speakers definitely, because he's one of them. So Manuel's great at helping with translating, and he's called a few potential participants and talked to them in Spanish.
Yes.
We have Portuguese-speaking people on our team, and we have a number of other languages represented that we can work with and help you with. But in terms of where you live, you've got to live in the US, because we're going to be sending kits to you, and you're going to be returning them to Canada as well. Yeah, US and Canada. It's got to be close enough that we can mail you a kit and you can send it back to us, and your samples are still good by the time we get them. And so we probably cannot do this internationally, but what we learned from this, we might be able to then, once we know and we've done this and we've been successful local, maybe we can open this up.
Yes, so one of my dreams is to be able to collaborate with similar researchers in Europe, where we could do this. We could coordinate and do this with their base. Because yes, sending samples over may not be as ideal in this type of study. So we will only start with the US, North America.
So it has nothing to do with us being America-centric, other than that's where we live and that's where we're going to be sending our kits from. And we want the samples to still be good by the time we get them back.
And so another related question, will we be taking medication, and what samples will we give you and how often?
So there is no medication requirement as part of the study. So you're going to do whatever you normally would be doing. And we're just going to you're going to tell us what you're on, of course, so that we know what medications you are or aren't taking. And then we're going to follow you and collect samples. The samples that we talked about is a small amount of blood using this little tool. I can maybe run out. I don't know if we can run out and grab one just to show you. We could do it live, right? You already did. Manuel already did it. There's a recording of him on working with us. And then this little patch, that micro patch that we're going to use. Maybe the tape that we're going to, the tape that you can use, and then the spit tube. Those four things.
And except the spit tube, the other two, we are thinking of doing it twice a year. So we'll send you twice a year. And the spit tube just once at the beginning of the study and never again.
Right.
We've had a couple of questions come in asking, will you tell us the results of whatever you find?
Yeah, that is our goal. So it depends to me, but whatever. So we'll definitely comment, like we're having what the cohort is, what we find that is of general interest. Personal information will not be disclosed or even contributed. So all your private data will only be used to send you devices and contact you. That's it. Even my team only has access to everything that goes on. So the results of the genotyping that you had and whatever medications you tell us you're having and whatever, but that's it. And of course that piece will not be disclosed. Right?
We will disclose pooled data. So when we learn something important, we will certainly let you know that. And actually, we plan to do this question and answer thing once or twice a year. And as we gather data, just as Manuel did at the beginning of this, showed some data about recruitment. We can also show data about what we're learning.
Exactly.
Of course, as Manuel said, it's very important to keep your private information private. So my team has your contact info because we're sending the kits. But that stops with us. That stays under lock and key. And when Manuel sees, even the families that you have, you don't know who those families are. You don't know what their names are. You know their age, gender, and relationship, and that's it. And it'll stay that way. So very safe, keeping everything that needs to be private. When we discover things, we'll disclose them as a group. But right now, we don't know what we're going to discover necessarily. We have
Yes,
some ideas.
that reminds me that somebody posed the question whether we would, whether we will sell or share the data with anyone. No. So your data is not shared with companies or other even or other researchers. The only thing that we will contribute to the NIH database is the downstream data that we have, and completely anonymous.
No contact information from you, no name, no nothing like that.
Yeah, so we only use that to contact you, to send you emails about a webinar like this, or send you the kids, or
right.
So we are getting very close to the top of the hour. The questions have been great and coming in rapid fire. That's been really exciting to see. It's been a really interesting discussion to be a part of. I have one more question. This is one that came in from one of our participants, and I feel it must be answered before we move on. And that is, why do you have a Barbie doll in the room?
The Barbie. So this is vitiligo Barbie. Someone sent me this as a gift. You can see she has vitiligo, and there are a number of vitiligo Barbies now. There's a vitiligo Ken, and you see she has vitiligo. So this is part of inclusion and diversity within Mattel. They've got Barbies with a number of different skin conditions, and so I've kept this one. This was the first one, I think. So I got this. And it's not intended to be an advertisement for Mattel, but if you want a vitiligo Barbie, they're pretty easy to obtain. I also have a vitiligo Lego that Lego sent us when that came out, and I still have to put it together, so I should have that.
Yeah. So if we didn't get to answer those questions, we will answer them in a blog. So just any question that was that we haven't answered, we'll hopefully answer them in the blog in the next week. The next weekly blog will do.
That's right. So Manuel, you definitely took one of the points I was about to make, which is that we were not able to get through everyone's questions, and we will follow up separately off Zoom with the answers to those questions, because we really do appreciate your interest and your participation here today. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, if you have the need to contact us about anything, about enrollment or about questions about receiving the kits or what have you, this is the email, vigor@umassmed.edu, where you can reach us. As I said at the beginning, this session has been recorded, and we will send you a copy of this recording so you can have, if you want to review it or share with anyone. And again, we thank you for your time and participation both tonight and throughout this study.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, and have a good night.
See you next time.